joined by Executive Vice Presidents and Tag Team Champions of AEW, Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks. Boys, how are we doing, guys?
Welcome, guys.
Good,
Thanks,
man.
guys.
Thanks for having us.
Doing great.
Look, we really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with us. And it is in aid of, and we'll make sure we get the plug in nice and early. We know what we're doing. Killing the Business from Backyards to the Big Leagues. Your brand new book out now. What's it like to have a memoir on top of everything else that's happened the last couple of years?
Tag team champs / authors.
My God, it's been such a
It's unreal. Yeah.
It's been a roller coaster the last 2 years. It almost feels like we're living in our own movie. If that sounds weird, but it's true.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was like another checklist thing for us. I remember reading Mick Foley's book when I was in high school, and I finished the book in a couple of days. And I remember thinking, God, if I could ever write a book, well, first have a wrestling career worth writing about. That was definitely a goal of mine, and because I knew, when I was 3 years old, I was going to be a pro wrestler. So by the time I was in high school, I was ready to just leave school and go to wrestling school immediately, but, so yeah, it's pretty incredible. I don't think it really felt 100% real because this thing was so difficult to do, and you're kind of just living the day to day and you're just trying to get through it. But once you finally hold the hard copy in your hand, the product, like we went into a Barnes and Noble the other day and we grabbed one off the shelf, and that to me was like, wow, it's real. We did it. And we're yet to experience the same thing with our action figures because, as you know, we just can't find them in stores. So I'm still searching for that high. but this was definitely a checklist. I think it was always for us. It was like, get an action figure, write a book, and be in a video game. And I think we're going to get to do all three of those. So it's the child of me is going, oh my God.
It's so amazing, though. But I mean, like you just said as well, To the Big Leagues is in the title, and you've kind of created your own big leagues, which is even more astounding. Like a title can't even do that justice.
Right.
Where does the book take us to at the moment in modern day?
It basically takes you to the announcement of All Elite Wrestling and how we got there. But we go all the way from the beginning. Like we take you all the way back to literally my birthday, where I almost died. I came very close to dying, actually, and they had to save me as a baby. And then I'm 4 years older than Nick. So my character gets introduced, obviously, before his does, because he just wasn't alive yet. But we really take a deep dive into our childhood in the beginning and talk about stuff that we never really talked about. Just a lot of the struggles that our family went through, what it was like, being born and raised in beautiful, sunny Southern California, and how weird that is probably for a lot of people. Like, where, in a town called Rancho Cucamonga, where I think the average temperature is, close to 80 degrees year round. And how weird it was, when we finally grew up and we were 16, we had our own wrestling ring. But we take you through everything and all of our struggles through the independence until we finally get to the happy ending that everybody is currently living in. And we really go into detail about meeting Tony Khan and, what our first experiences with him were like, and basically how the whole thing was born, how All Elite Wrestling was born. That's where the book ends.
Is that, I mean, you said it earlier, Mick Foley, he's got one of the all-time great books. I think Jericho as well is the owner of some great wrestling books. Yep. Talk to me about the writing process. Like, how do you guys went about that in between? Because your lives are insane as it is. And on top of that, you went, let's just write a book. Why not?
Oh, my God. I told Matt it was probably the worst timing ever, because of how busy we were. But what's funny is that at the time we thought, oh, maybe this is a good time to do it, because we're not wrestling. We're only creating a company. But in our brains, we thought maybe we would have some time to spare, and little did we know, no chance in hell did we. So just any time we find an hour to write, we did. And the funny thing is, we wrote this whole thing on our iPhones in between flights, and just like I said, any minute that we had to spare, we put things down. And the hardest part of it was doing all the fact checking and talking to our parents and our family to make sure our story was right, and things like that you don't even think would be hard.
It became such a burden for us at times, because anytime in normal life you get your work done and you go, okay, I'm really looking forward to just sitting down and watching a show or something. And for me, it was always in the back of my mind. It was like, nope, no time to watch a show, no time to listen to a podcast, no time to do anything. It's time to write. Like my entire life kind of revolved around, you know, putting pen to paper, or in this case, because we didn't actually do that, putting, you know, opening up my notepad on my iPhone and writing. And we had an idea of like what we wanted to do every chapter, but a lot of it was like, I would just start writing and pouring my heart out onto this thing and taking myself back in time. And I would just write, and almost aimlessly, not knowing exactly where the chapter is even taking me. And I, you know, I would have my poor wife Dana read everything, and she would go through the whole thing and be like, you're giving too much detail about this thing that nobody cares about. I would struggle with it, or I wouldn't know where I was going sometimes, because I'm surprised I'm not an author. Like, this is something that, you know, we've never done before. So just doing something for the first time made me realize how difficult it is to write, what a struggle it is. And you really have to have a game plan. And I just, you know, figured, well, if I just start writing, it'll all, you know, work itself out. And no, it's not like that. You have to have an idea of what each chapter is going to, you know, where each chapter is taking you. And then Nick and I, just like we've done our entire career, we would tag in and out, and he would take over this timeline. And sometimes the timelines wouldn't exactly match up where it would be interesting. Nick would be like, oh, great, you took me to this year. Like, this is, you know, this should have been your chapter. Like, so there was a lot of that, a lot of struggling, a lot of collaborating. I'd have to help Nick refresh his memory, because I have more of I have a better long-term memory. Kind of like,
you got a better recall.
Yeah, like my recall for things, like, it's kind of photographic. I could just take myself back in time almost and remember everything. And Nick will just be like, what? Because I'll remember conversations verbatim, and he's just like blown away by that. So like a lot of the stuff, like I had to help him with, jog his memory with. But you know what, like, it was such a fun project to work on, like getting to talk to my parents about, you know, stories about when I was 12, and blowing the dust off of old photo albums to find pictures. And it really made me appreciate exactly what we went through and what we did. And because you, like, to be a really good writer, that I learned is, like, you really have to take your mind back to those times and relive the moments, even when they were painful. So like, there would be times I'd be sitting there bawling my eyes out, crying, because I'm reliving, you know, the death of my grandpa and how bad that was, or whatever it was. You know, when Nick and I were at our lowest back in 2011, 12, and when I was poor and I was about to have a baby and I didn't have any money, like, to be a good author, you really have to go back in time and write exactly what you're experiencing at that moment. So I really have a greater appreciation for anybody who's ever written anything, because it's very hard.
Yeah.
Alex absolutely popping for that as the writer of the group. It's the reason that I broadcast. I can't be dealing with the written word in any way, shape, or form. So I tip my hat to you both, sirs. I want to ask actually about when it comes to the current success and the living the dream as it is right now. You talked about going up to meeting Tony Khan, those early meetings. And I think people who know you guys and know being the elite and the work in Japan and in the Indies maybe trusted that guys like you and Cody, etc., would have a handle enough on the business. But what was it like having this guy come from the outside who didn't necessarily have that experience that a lot of people had question marks about, and what did he bring to the table maybe because of that?
You know, what's funny is he tried contacting both of us at first, and I no-sold it because I had heard this story before, you know. So I was like, I don't believe it. And luckily, thank God, Matt picked up the phone and talked to him. And we, after one conversation, Matt and I actually we were still like skeptical a little bit, you know, but the way he had talked to Matt was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And it opened our eyes, and the relationship got further. And I remember meeting him for the first time. Actually, it was in England, right, Matt? It
was in London.
An ROH show. He was in the balcony. Oh, London, and he was in the balcony at a what is that building called?
York Hall.
Yeah, I mean, I was at that show,
yeah.
So it's weird to think that you were there and that was happening in the same room.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. He was there, and little did Ring of Honor know that we were going to meet him. And he picked us up in a limousine right after that the match we had, and he took us to a stadium that his team plays at, and we pretty much talked from there, and things started snowballing, and that we pretty much knew it was serious when we were in his at his stadium looking at this massive building, and he's telling us, hey, maybe we could fill this thing up one day.
It's still, though, like, even till the day we signed, though, there's a certain, like, I'm overprotective of our brand at that point, because we'd done so much to build up to what we were, like the Young Bucks brand, the Super Kick Party thing. Like, we had just done the All In show. So it's like, it was still scary to just hand over the keys to somebody else. And that was the biggest reason probably why we didn't go to WWE at the time, is because we were just like, what are they going to do with this? Like, we were almost overprotective of what we'd created. So yeah, meeting this new guy, Tony, it was like, yeah, this guy seems great. But again, we're just meeting him for the first time, and he's saying all of the right things, but there's still like a trepidation, you know what I mean? Like, because you've been doing this for so many years now, and we struggled for so long, and we're finally having this success. So it's like, man, is it the time to finally just hand it all over to someone? But when you tell us, listen, I don't want you to hand it over to me, I want you to keep doing what you're doing, that reassured us in a way where we were just like, wow, so we can keep being ourselves. We don't have to. He's like, yeah, I want you to be yourselves. That's what's gotten you to the dance. Why would you stop doing that? So when we heard that, it was reassuring to us. It was like, this guy sounds like, he's a huge wrestling fan, and he's not afraid to talk about being a wrestling fan. He loves wrestling more than anything in the world. He's probably, to this day, he probably loves wrestling more than anyone I've ever met. And he knows more about wrestling than anyone I've ever met. So I've never met anybody that was so passionate about it. And one of the first conversations we had, he's just throwing out dates about what things that we've done and accomplished in certain cities and towns. I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. So like Nick said, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like we had one conversation and we knew. It took a lot of conversations. It took talking to him every day, and meeting him and meeting his dad, which we talk about in the book as well, and realizing, like, one, this is real, and two, I think this is someone that I'm comfortable working with on an everyday basis, because he sounds legit and he loves wrestling. But there was a trepidation where we're just like, man, like, we worked so hard. What if this is a mistake? Because it's a big thing to do what we did, and we were essentially putting it all on the line and putting it in someone else's hands, and luckily for us, it all worked out.
It sure has worked out. I'd say it's going pretty damn well, and that kind of brings me around to my next point. You guys at Full Gear killed it with FTR. It was the match that everyone wanted for so long. FTR were kind of, critical might be a bit of a strong word, but had some thoughts about the build and how there could have been more attention to that. Were you guys happy with how everything played out and the match itself? I mean, I've got to say, man, the finish for me was great. I loved it.
Thank you, man. There's always going to be pressure on us to deliver in a match like that, because there's not many more dream tag matches pretty much in wrestling anymore. So we knew if we did this one, and when we did this one, it has to be good. And we actually tried to push the match back a little further. Like, we were thinking more of our February pay-per-view, but for whatever reason, it didn't work out, and we had to get it going. And we did have to rush a lot of the storytelling to get to Full Gear. But you know what? When it's all said and done, and we look back at it now in hindsight, I love that we did it then. The moment felt real, if special. I don't know if Matt wants to add to that, but I'm just so happy that it's over with and that we're okay.
Well, I was going to kind of say that the problem is that the story isn't necessarily over. It very much could come back around again.
Correct.
For sure.
I was just going to say that it was really tough because here's this match that people said that was never going to happen, and it was built for 4 or 5 years. So everybody's lofty expectations are already intimidating to you, and people just expect so much out of everything. So, Eddie, like, that's probably one reason why people were criticizing the build, because in their minds they built it up to being something different, something else. Like right out of the gate, I told Nick, I was like, we're in trouble because no matter how good this match is, it's still not happening in front of 12,000 screaming fans. It's going to be in front of 1,000 socially distanced fans wearing masks in an outdoor arena where the weather is usually bad. So like everything possibly that could be working against us or impairing the experience of watching said match, it was playing against us, not in our favor. So that's probably why I was most nervous about this match. I remember texting my wife that day. She said, how's it looking? I said, I'm very nervous. She said, you've never told me you're nervous in 17 years. Because she's always asked me that before every match. She's been with me since the backyard days. Like she walked me down the aisle at one of my backyard shows. It's a picture in the book. So she told me, she's like, I've never gotten that response back. I'm nervous. She's like, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. But like, I just knew everything that was working against us. It was almost impossible to overcome that. And at the same time, have the match that everybody's expecting, because they don't expect a good match or even really a great match. They want a classic match. Like that's what they've built in their brains. Like this is what this match will be. It'll be a classic. And so like the four of us had a lot of pressure. That might have been the most pressure that I've ever felt. It was definitely in the top 3 or something. So for us to go out there and to have the match that we did, and for people to, for it to be in the argument of, oh, I've heard people say one of the greatest tag matches ever. I don't know if it was one of the greatest tag matches ever, but I will tell you this, like that might be the most proud I've ever been after a match to overcome those odds. I've compared it to like, if you go to a movie theater and you go check out this movie, but the speakers are kind of blown out, so you can't really hear that well, and the screen's a little blurry, but the movie was so dang good by the end of it. You're like, the credits hit and you're like, that was one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. It's like, how do you do that? It's impossible because it's such an impaired situation where we didn't have everything that we should have had out there for us to help us. And we still had that match. Like, that's why I'm so proud of the performance that the four of us gave. And the finish was for me was such great storytelling, and it was their idea. It was 100% they get the credit, because it was that they came to us with that, and immediately Nick and I looked at each other. We're like, that's the finish. Like there was no argument. That was it. It was perfect. Will there be another dream rematch? Absolutely. I don't know if that's something you rush right into. I think you have to kind of feel it out. I think when you're first planning things, you're immediately going, yeah, we'll do like 7 of them. But then you actually do the match and you see the emotional and the physical toll it takes on you. And you go, I think we can sit back and kind of enjoy this first one for a little bit, because there's no reason to rush right in. Because as soon as we start hyping up the rematch, everybody's going to be, their expectations are going to be even bigger. So I think the four of us are all in agreement where we're just like, let's breathe for a second, and eventually we'll do the rematch. I
mean, on the strength of that, and I've just got a couple more before I know we have to let you go. Thank you very much for your time. I mean, so for me, when you look at the Omega Page match at Revolution as well, you've had 2 of the all great matches, not just this year, but in recent times. And yet, PWI in their tag team list, man, what's all that about?
Oh my God, no top 10.
What's that about?
I sent Matt a screenshot of the cover. I was like, get out of here. This is just like a rib on us now at this point. Like, what do we got to prove, right?
But, I love that.
I think they're more into the like kayfabe aspect of like the listings. So if you see it as that, like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have made the top 10 because we lost almost every big match that we had. So I guess if you go off of that, I guess it makes sense.
I don't mind it. Like, I always feel like we perform best with a chip on our shoulder. So you know, if the list is a kayfabe list or not, or it's how they feel, like, that's great. Like, let me continue to kind of surprise people and be the underdog in situations like that. Like, here we are, we're the AEW tag team champions. And sometimes we still, like, if you watch our matches, we always work best when we're fighting from underneath. So, you know, whenever critics say things about us, or there's arguments about, you know, whether or not we're good, or if we're a cancer to the wrestling business, or if we've actually done well, like, I love that there's always these debates and arguments about who's the best, because that just puts that chip on our shoulder, and it makes us
yeah, you're right. It gives us more fuel. Like,
yes,
if we didn't have the fuel, then we would probably just quit by now. So, like, we're not going to stop until like we've cemented our legacy, you know. So
what else is there
to
to prove? You know what I mean? What else? But clearly there is a lot, and I feel like we'll have one of those careers. We'll have one of those careers where maybe like 10, 20 years, when we're like far removed from the business, I think people will then go, oh, they did help the wrestling business. Like, yeah,
oh, they
like,
were
I don't
pretty
think
good.
it's something you recognize.
I mean, the top two on the list are both built by your company. It's hardly like, you know,
right.
It's a complete pox on you, but I'm kind of astonished that you're not in there. The final thing I did want to ask about was the TV deal here in the UK and the current situation. Like, we've talked a lot about a show here over time, and obviously what's happened in this crazy 2020 has put that to the kind of the wall at the moment. But there's been a lot of talk when we've spoken with Cody about whether or not you guys could get live on here in the UK to help build that fan base. So is it coming? Are we getting something more here? Can the UK fans have something to look forward to?
It's worth noting on that one as well. Cody did present some great numbers that you guys have done over here. That gave a lot of us kind of heart. Right. And we know that Fighter Fest was meant to be here too. Tony told me that last year. So, man.
We had a few dates already lined up, man, and it sucks because we had such a cool, like, tour, like, already booked up and ready. Like, we were going to do our shows in our hometown, which we were so pumped for. And then soon after, we were going to go to the UK and do a bunch of stuff there. And it's just, the COVID stuff just screwed up everything. And we're hoping that things get better soon. But as far as a live show there for Dynamite, I'm not sure what the latest is. But I know that they're progressively working on things, so hopefully something better will even come up soon. But for now, I think it is what it is as of now, but I'm not sure what the update is.
They're loving the numbers though. Like we've been getting them, and everybody's psyched. Like, Tony can't believe it. He sent us. We were in a group email a couple weeks ago, and he's just freaking out. You can see it in his text. He's so like. Well, I remember one time when we first met, like we were talking about earlier, in London, and we sat there, you know, in the arena or the outdoor stadium, and we were already. It was the first time we'd ever met. We were already fantasy booking a show. We're like, where would we put the stage? Where would we set up the ring? He's like, one day we're gonna run a show here, you know. And we talked about maybe eventually doing a summer show, an outdoor show there when it's warm. It's like, that was honestly, doing a show in the UK was one of the first things we'd ever talked about.
Yeah, that's true.
We're coming. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time, a matter of when. It's always been on our radar. Obviously, the last 8-9 months has kind of put things, at a delay, but it will happen. I'm excited to go back there too, because every time Nick and I would go out there, man, we had some of the best times, some of the rowdiest crowds ever. So I really do miss, I just miss traveling in general. I just want to get out of Jacksonville, especially, for the love of God.
I've been there for a preseason NFL camp. I can understand wanting to get out of Jacksonville.
Oh yeah,
Matt, Nick, thank you so much for all the time you've given us. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you, and I'll make sure we give lots of plugs to the book, because it is out now and available from all of your kind of usual bookstores. You can get the online version, the Kindle version, and everything as well. So Young Bucks killing the business from backyards to the big league. Cheers, guys.
Thanks for watching the video. If you want to support the channel, you can sign up to our sponsor, ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN means that when you go online, your data is 100% secure no matter what you do on the web. And if you maybe want to watch Canadian Netflix or American Hulu, ExpressVPN have servers in over 100 different countries. We have this amazing Black Friday deal available where you can get 49% off, and the deal is available all the way through to December 14th. All you need to do to sign up is go to itrwrestling.com/VPN.